What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we finish up the year. Today is our last video of 2022, which is absolutely crazy. I feel like this year has gone by super quickly, but I want to say thank you for this year. Thank you all so much for all the support that I have gotten on all of the videos. Thank you to all of our new subscribers that we're getting every single day. I really appreciate all of you, and you all are the reason that this is possible. Going into 2023, I'm hoping to expand a little bit on this series, on the content that I make on this channel, and so I'm hoping to only make this a better experience for you going forward, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Of course, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are still not subscribed, so please help us to fix those numbers up. I will be posting my new goal for subscribers very soon once the new year hits, and we'll see if we can make it. Of course, also make sure to click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. So for the last video of this year, we are doing a Psi Warrior build, and you know, it's kind of fitting. You know, it wasn't supposed to be this subclass originally, it was supposed to be a different one, but I think it kind of worked out because we're going to end up with kind of a themed build sort of this week, which is pretty neat. We talked about how this kind of emulates the Jedi back on Tuesday. If you haven't seen that video, make sure to check that out up in the icon above. So we're going to do kind of a Star Wars themed build today, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that. I'm super excited to show you what I have come up with, and so without any further ado, let's jump right in. Starting off, as always, we have our race. And listen, all I have to do is say I'm going variant human and take a feat, and then I say that I'm a Jedi, blah, 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 blah. You know what? That's boring. I don't care. We are still going to do Star Wars, but I don't think anybody would mind if I shifted from necessarily being a Jedi to being a Sith. And so we're going to go a different route with this, and instead of being Luke Skywalker, we're going to be General Grievous. So that's right, we're going Warforged this week, just for the theming. Honestly, any race will work on this. I've got some other possibilities at the very end, but the race really isn't super intensely important on this build, just because there are a few races that give you some things that are thematically appropriate, but at the same time they become slightly redundant with what we get in this class at the same time. So it is what it is. We'll talk about some of those at the very end of the video, but we're going to go with Warforged because it's fun and I want to be General Grievous. So with that, we of course get a few different things. Constructed Resilience, which just gives us a few different things. We basically kind of pick and choose from like Dwarf and Elf and a few things like that. We get Sentry's Rest, of course, which gives us a shorter long rest. We also get Integrated Protection, which just gives us a +1 to armor class, which is awesome, and our armor can't be removed against our will. We also get Specialized Design as well, so we get another proficiency on top of everything. So is this race busted strong? Not really. I think it's good, but it's not great. But it's fun and it makes sense with this build, so we're going for it. I don't care. For our stats, of course, we're using our modified standard array as always. If you are using a point buy system, if you're using rolled stats, if you're using regular standard array or something else, your stats will look different than mine. Just focus on the top 3, and then you can dump the bottom 3 and just make them appropriate to what you need at your table. For our 17, we're going to put that in our dex, our 15 in intelligence, 13 constitution, 12 wisdom, 10 charisma, and 8 strength. Now, I would have loved to have had a high charisma, and at the very end of the video, I'm going to tell you a way to do a charisma-based build, but mechanically speaking, it's better for us to have a high intelligence because that's what all of our features are based on. Now, if your DM wants to base everything on charisma so that you can be the Jedi type thing, more power to you, and we'll talk about that in the honorable mentions. I'm focusing on rules as written, and it bases it all on intelligence, and so I'm focusing on that for this build. Of course, from our racial, we get a +2 and a +1, and we're going to put those into our dexterity for a 19, and we're going to put the +1 in our constitution. We're going to fix that odd numbered intelligence later on. For our equipment, I would just rather go with a rapier for now, or something to that effect. Again, if it's a theme build, talk to your DM if you can do something else themed, but we want something with finesse. We're going to be a melee build, and we want to be able to use our dexterity, so rapier is going to be your best option most of the time. And then some studded leather armor is going to be your best option for armor. Of course, you can integrate that into your design however you want to. And then if you wanted to wield a shield, you can. It's really optional. You will have a free hand to wield a shield if you want to, at least for the beginning of this character. And so if you want it, it'll help your AC out. If you don't want it, not a big deal. So with all that out of the way, let's start taking some levels. So last week was the only week so far that we've started with something other than fighter when we did the gunslinger build. And this week we're going right back to our old ways of starting with fighter and taking quite a few fighter levels before we even consider any kind of multi-classing. So at level 1, we of course get a fighting style and second wind. For the fighting style, I'm going to recommend the dueling fighting style, but you could just as easily go with defense, even superior technique. But at the same time, I mean, we've already got all these other things that basically work like our superior technique type of thing. So I think it's fine to go without it on this build. And so you can either get a flat +2 to your damage or a +1 to your AC. I'm going to recommend dueling because I like the higher damage, but if you'd rather go with a higher AC, totally fine. That's also good. You also get second wind, of course, and so that's a nice little bonus action heal for you, which is pretty cool. Again, you can work on theming with Warforged on how all of that works with you. I think thematically, Warforged are just so fun, and finding a canonical reason why healing magic works on you is just awesome. And I think it leads to some really, really fun roleplay situations. At Fighter 2, of course, we get Action Surge, which is huge. We can take a second action, which is pretty awesome, which most of the time is going to be hit, Action Surge, and hit again. But there could be some exceptions if you need to shove or anything like that, dash maybe. But most of the time it's going to be hitting more than once. At level 3, we of course are Fighter 3, and we get our subclass. And so now is when we awaken to the Force. Maybe we've been hearing these voices in the distance of past people who have studied in this way. Maybe you have a master in this craft that is kind of teaching you the ways of how all of this works. Again, you can craft your story however you want to do it. I think there's a lot of fun ways that you can work this into a story. But we get psionic power, which is a bunch of things at once. Basically, we get 4 d6s plus an extra one that we can get back on a bonus action that we can use to fuel 3 different abilities. Again, we went into a lot of detail on this on Tuesday's video, so I'm not going to go into as much on this video because that makes that video redundant. But basically, we can kind of block a little bit of damage, we can deal a little bit of extra damage, or we can move things with our mind, which is pretty cool. I think overall all of that is great, and we of course can fuel those with those d6s, and those are going to of course upgrade and become more plentiful as we level up. At level 4, we of course are a Fighter 4, and we get our first ASI or feat. And yes, there is that odd number in our intelligence, and there's an odd number in our dexterity. So the smart person would probably go ahead and just bump both of those and make those even numbers. But you know what? We're not doing that. We're going to take a feat, and we are actually going to take the telekinetic feat. I mean, thematically, it only makes sense. We now get a telekinetic shove, which is huge. This can either get you into trouble, this can get you out of trouble, this can get your friends into or out of trouble. I personally like getting people out of melee that are your friends rather than the moving other people. I like it more, but it's still good either way, right? If somebody is right next to a cliff, you can telekinetic shove them off the cliff. Of course, they have to be right there, but you know, it can happen. The better thing for me is when your wizard or your sorcerer are accidentally caught off guard and there's now someone in melee with them, you can get them out of melee since it is forced movement, and then they can run away without taking that opportunity attack, of course assuming no reach or anything like that. So all of that is really cool. And of course with this as well, we get an increase in our intelligence because that's the stat we're going to choose for it, and so now we're at a 16. So yes, we're still at an odd stat on our dexterity. We'll fix it later, don't worry, we will get there. At fighter 5 we get extra attack, and on top of that we actually get a double upgrade to our psionic energy dice. Not only do they upgrade to a d8, but we also get more of them because our proficiency bonus also went up at this level, so we get 6 d8 of them plus an extra that we can get back on a bonus action. At fighter 6, we get another ASI or feat, which is just so nice. I love that fighters get them so often. And again, I'm going to leave that dexterity there at a 19. Yes, it makes total sense to go ahead and bump it here, and if you want to, that's totally fine. But to me, again, I really like taking the feats here in order to really shore up our theming here. And so I'm going to take the mobile feat. The mobile feat, of course, is going to make us faster. It's going to make us be able to get in and out of combat a lot easier and make us a lot less susceptible to taking damage, at least in melee combat. And so I really like that option. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to add a meaningful boost to what it is that we are trying to do. At fighter 7 we get telekinetic adept, and so this is one more feature that tacks on extra abilities that go with our psionic energy dice. With this, we have our psionic leap, which is a way to double our speed for a little bit and fly for this turn. And again, we just upgraded that speed with the mobile feat. And so now we can fly up to 80 feet in a turn, which is really cool. I really like that. And of course, we also get the ability to knock people prone when we used our 3rd level ability that allows us to deal a little bit of extra force damage. Keep in mind, this is something that's great to blow on that first attack. And so you hit them, possibly knock them prone. Your intelligence is pretty good, so the DC isn't awful. And if they fall prone, you've now given yourself advantage on every attack that you can make on that turn. Of course, you can also action search, and then you can get out of there because of the mobile feat. Even though the opportunity attack would be a disadvantage anyway, doesn't matter. If they can't make it at all, then you don't have to risk it. And so I really like all of that and how all of that works together. Now that we have 7 levels of fighter under our belt, now is where we start to look elsewhere. I think that this build is really cool, but I definitely would not recommend going elsewhere until after level 7, once we get the ability to knock people prone as part of our attacks. It's also really cool being able to give the fly speed. I think that those are just too useful to push off for any kind of multi-classing. And I mean, honestly, this is one of those classes that you really can get a ton of stuff out of it without multi-classing, and that's totally fine, you know. But we're looking for mechanical advantages as well as thematic ones, and so thematically I think it's about time, and mechanically I think it's also about time to look elsewhere so that we can really fulfill our Star Wars fantasy of being a Jedi or Sith here. And so what better way to do that than by having a lightsaber, or I guess in this case a dark saber. That's right, we want to go ahead and pick up a particular spell to give us a little bit of a cooler weapon in order to be able to deal a little bit of extra damage, to change the type of damage we're dealing, and just, again, thematically, we're going to look awesome doing this. So we're going to take some wizard levels. Wizard, of course, makes a lot of sense with our high intelligence already. Of course, you could have done something with artificer, and again, we'll talk about that at the very end, but I think that going wizard here is going to give us a few really cool things. While it does give us less health, it gives us a lot better access to certain spells, and those feel really good. So at level 1, of course, we're going to be a wizard 1 at level 8 overall, and we get spellcasting and arcane recovery. Arcane recovery, of course, allows us to get back spell slots in a limited manner over the course of a short rest, which is pretty good. And as far as our spells go, of course, it's intelligence based, so we're going to be doing okay with this. I would definitely take Booming Blade. because it's Booming Blade. That allows you to lock down enemies, and what's great is that with the mobile feat, you can lock them down and then run away. And that feels really, really good. So that's one really, really cool way to do this. Of course, you cannot attack twice with Booming Blade using extra attack. You can only do one of these, but you could technically Booming Blade and then Action Surge and make 2 attacks with extra attack. But yeah, just keep in mind, you can't Booming Blade twice in one turn because casting a spell is your action. As far as other spells to pick up here, I kind of like Mind Sliver. I'm trying to think of like Star Wars-y, like Force type of spells, and I feel like Mind Sliver makes a bit of sense here because we're targeting people's minds here. We're trying to make them do what it is that we want them to do, which is pretty cool. And then for the other one, I kind of like Shocking Grasp because then we've kind of got a Palpatine type of thing going on here. But you also could just do Toll the Dead if you wanted to for a damaging cantrip. I personally like Shocking Grasp just for the ability to get rid of any kind of reactions. But Toll the Dead is probably going to be a little bit better just because you already have a way to get out of melee without taking that attack of opportunity. So it is what it is. I think either way is totally fine. As far as first level spells go, I think either Cause Fear or Charm Person makes sense here. Of course, again, these are not the droids you're looking for. That makes a lot of sense to me. Find Familiar. That way you can have a little friend. Maybe you could say that it's a little droid as your familiar, which I think is really cool. And of course, this could give you advantage on that first attack during a turn, which would be really nice. Of course, if you're pumping some extra damage into it, trying to knock people prone, you want to make sure that that hit actually succeeds. So I really like that on here as well. Long Strider makes some sense here as well. Shield, duh. I mean, let's be real. Shield has to come here in order to block incoming hits. Silvery Barbs actually makes a lot of sense because you are kind of changing how things work out, right? Somebody's about to hit you and you can like change time actually and move them out of the way. And I think that's really cool. It's not explicitly force use, but I'm sure that you can flavor it to make it fit that a little bit better. And then Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I mean, come on. Again, we're influencing people's minds here, and that's kind of what I'm focused on here with these first level spells. Again, I'm not really that worried about dealing damage with these spells just because we have weapons that will deal damage, and we're going to have a new weapon here in just a minute. So it's like, I'm not really that concerned with dealing tons of damage with these spells. It's more so for the utility. Level 2, we of course get to pick our subclass of Wizard, which is really, really cool. And there's really only one option that makes a lot of sense here. Now, there are a few others that could work. I'm not saying that there aren't any that will work, but it's got to be Blade Singing, right? It's got to be the Blade Singer here because we are using a lightsaber and going around and doing magic. And so this only makes sense for us to go with the Blade Singer, which is so cool. I have been wanting to make Blade Singer work with a build for so long, and I just could not figure out a great way to fit it in, and finally this just makes way too much sense. So we get training in War and Song, which is, it's fine, whatever, but we're here for Blade Song. Blade Song, of course, allows you to, as a bonus action, begin your song. And of course, this could be you flavoring this however you want to, of you opening your senses to the Force, of whatever you want to do. But we get so many bonuses off of Blade Song that you just can't go wrong with this. There's no downside to having something like this. So we have a huge bonus to our AC again on top of everything. We of course get a buff to our concentration checks, among other things. Just really, really awesome help in everything that we're trying to do here. And actually, this is also a level where our proficiency bonus has gone up, and so we actually get more dice to use on our psionic powers, which is great. So we now have 8 d8s plus the one we can get back as a bonus action. So that's pretty cool as well. I think that's really awesome. So here at this level, I could understand you saying, okay, we go back to fighter and we're there the rest of the way, blah, 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 blah. I get it. Makes sense. You'd get access to telekinesis and that's totally fine. But to me, I got a comment on our video Tuesday that said, you know, it's a real bummer that you have to use your action in order to concentrate on telekinesis, and in order to maintain that, especially when a fighter is so focused on making all of these attacks, especially post Fighter 11. And you know, that's a really good point. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. If the feature allowed you to maneuver everything as a bonus action rather than you making the attack as a bonus action, that feature would have been way better and would have worked a lot more smoothly. But so with that, it's like, I don't know that I want to give up my action in order to concentrate on that spell, when I could be concentrating on a different spell that I like a whole lot better. So we're not going to worry about getting Fighter 18, and I'm not really worried about it. So as long as we get Fighter 17, then we get our full upgrades of our psionic energy dice. That's all I care about. So we're going Wizard 3, and so we're going to get access to not only cantrip formulas, so you can swap out formulas, whatever, but we also get second level wizard spells. And there are two that I definitely think you should take here. Hold Person, because it's a force choke, and Shadow Blade, because now you have the Dark Saber. Come on, those just make way too much sense to me. I think that just fits this theme so well, and I absolutely love it. So of course, Shadow Blade is going to allow us to deal psychic damage, and we can have another weapon in our hand. Now, you could dual wield at this point, and I'm going to talk about that briefly here. You could dual wield your rapier plus your Shadow Blade if you wanted to. The reason I'm suggesting this possibility is because, one, our bonus action is not really accounted for most of the time. Obviously, we have a few uses of it, but we don't have a ton. So you could be making that bonus action attack, in which case, of course, we would need the dual wielder feat and all that. The biggest reason, though, is because Shadow Blade, technically, at least rules as written that I've found, does not work with Booming Blade. And so you would still need the rapier in your hand to make a Booming Blade attack, and then you would have your Shadow Blade for everything else. But I mean, if you're not planning on using Booming Blade at all and you wanted to take a different cantrip, then that's totally fine. Use the Shadow Blade all the time. But technically, rules as written, the blade has to have a cost in order for Booming Blade to work, and it's just not the best, unfortunately. So but if at your table they work together, and I know there are plenty of tables that allow this, if your table allows them to work together, more power to you. Use them together, have a blast. But I know a lot of tables don't allow that, so I just want to make sure that I cover that for both sides of that spectrum. Now that we've gotten our Shadow Blade, our Dark Saber, I think the rest of the levels need to be in Fighter, because this will give us our maxed out amount and potency of our psionic energy dice. And so back to Fighter we go for the rest of the build. So Fighter 8, we get another ASI or a feat, and I'm going to recommend just going +1 dex, +1 intelligence, and now we end up with an odd number intelligence. But that's okay, we will fix that. But more importantly, we are now maxed out on our dexterity, and that's the big thing. Just now we're able to hit a lot easier. Now we're dealing a little bit of extra damage. It goes a long way, and so I really think that that's really important to pick up at this point. At Fighter 9, we get our first round of Indomitable, so we can reroll a saving throw, which is really nice. At Fighter 10, we get another subclass feature, which is Guarded Mind. So we can now end Charm and Frightened effects a lot easier, which is great. And we pick up a resistance to psychic damage, which is cool. I really like that. Also at this level, we get an upgrade to the number of dice that we have. So we now have 10 D8s plus the 1 in psionic energy dice, so that feels really good. And then at the next level, at Fighter 11, we not only get extra attack a second time, but we also get our dice upgraded to D10s, so we now have 10 D10s plus the 1 we get back on a bonus action. So that feels really, really good. At Fighter 12, we're gonna get another ASI or feat, and so I need to clean up those ASIs. What better way than a half feat? And I'm going to go ahead and take Fey Touched. Fey Touched makes a lot of sense here. Of course, you could call it Force Touched and do something like that, but you get access to Misty Step, which is a great use of our bonus action. We have spell slots here if we were to want to use it. I would probably save those for Shadow Blade, but that's just me. But you do have access to that if you needed it. But we also get another first level spell here from Divination or Enchantment. I would take Command, and I think Command makes a lot of sense. Again, these are not the droids you're looking for. Go look somewhere else. I think that makes way too much sense to not take, and command is just a great spell overall. For a first level spell, you can get a lot out of it, and I like that a lot. And of course, we bump our intelligence to 18 with this as well, so that feels like a really, really good level for us. At Fighter 13, we of course get our second round of Indomitables, so we can reroll 2 saving throws, which is good. At Fighter 14, we get another ASI or feat, and I think just max your intelligence. Just bump that up to 20. You could also bump your constitution if you wanted to, but I would recommend just getting that intelligence as high as you possibly can. It helps your blade song, it helps your ability to cast spells, it helps the saving throws that they are trying to make against you. It just helps all of that stuff. We also get an upgrade to 12 D10s plus the extra at this point as well because of our upgrade in the proficiency bonus. At Fighter 15, we get Bulwark of Force, which allows us to give half cover to ourselves and our friends, which is always going to be a good thing. So your armor class is looking pretty great. I mean, most of the time, assuming you're wearing just regular studded leather armor, which you may have some better armor by now being level 18, you've got a 12 plus 5 from blade song plus 1 from your race. If you have a shield, that's another plus 2, which is a 20 AC. So that feels pretty good. I think that's really awesome, and there are plenty of other ways to boost AC through this as well. If you did the dual wielding route, of course you would probably want to take the dual wielder feat somewhere in there. We'll talk about that, and of course that would leave you at a 19 AC because it's only a plus 1 bonus, but still I think that's pretty cool. I think that's really nice. At Fighter 16, we get one more feat, and I'm going to recommend the tough feat. I think it's just too important to take more health here, and I think we are never going to have enough on a build like this that's going to be generally up in the fray. Just being tougher to take down is always going to be a good thing. And finally, Fighter 17, we get our second round of Action Surge and our third round of Indomitable, which is always going to be good, and we get our final upgrade to our psionic energy dice of 12d12 plus the 1 on our bonus action. So that's our build for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this build. I think this is a fun one. I love adding the Blade Singer to really anything because it's just such a fun subclass of wizard, and I've just been trying to find an excuse to throw it on for so long, and this was my chance. And so I hope you guys liked that adaptation. So let's get into our honorable mentions. I have a lot because I had so many ideas for this subclass. This subclass just breathes flavor, and so many ideas came to my head, and I went through several builds before I landed on this one. But this is where my mind went kind of early on. Number 1, Barbarian, the Totem Warrior Bear specifically. 3 levels of that would have given us resistance to all damage. So that's kind of tough, right? We get resistance to every bit of damage with the Bear Totem except for Psychic. And then we would get resistance to Psychic with this subclass. We also could have picked it up through a race, but whatever. I think that's one thing that's definitely worth talking about through your rage. Rage is super helpful here, and I think just 3 levels of Barbarian and get out, and I think you're good. Another one is the Soul Knife Rogue. The Soul Knife Rogue, of course, also uses psionic energy dice, although they are not the same feature. They do not combine. They are 2 separate pools, but still, obviously, the flavor is there for them using the same type of dice. It's all from your mind, and so that's definitely one that would make sense. The big reason why I didn't go with it is because I probably would have taken more levels in Rogue than in Fighter, and so I didn't want to make this the feature when I would be taking so many levels in Rogue. So maybe when we do Soul Knife Rogue on the channel, maybe that's what we'll do. We'll focus more on that Soul Knife, but for now, I think you're going to be better off focusing on Soul Knife and then taking a few levels of this. So that's why I didn't feature it. And then finally, the Battlesmith Artificer makes a lot of sense here because then you can just focus solely on intelligence, and I think that makes a lot of sense to me. You get your little dog companion, even though it's gonna die really quickly most of the time, but still, intelligence being used for your weapon attacks, that's huge, right? I think that makes a huge difference, and so that could have been one to really focus on. As far as other feats go, obviously Dual Wielder was a big one. So you could have taken the Dual Wielder feat, had your Shadow Blade, had a rapier in the other hand, and just gone to town. And I think that could have been really, really fun in order to do that. Of course, you're still getting a +1 bonus to AC there, and you would get to add that bonus bit of damage on the offhand attack, which is really great. Dual wielder is a great feat. It's just dual wielding is usually lackluster, to say the least. So unfortunately, most of the time this doesn't work out, but it's an archetype that could work. And then also Warcaster. Warcaster makes a ton of sense on a build like this. Of course, being able to cast Booming Blade as a reaction is something that I would love to have been able to do. I just did not have time for it on this build, but definitely makes a ton of sense. Finally, for races, I went with a very interesting race here, and that's the Simic Hybrid. The Simic Hybrid is one that I've never used on the channel, even though it's a very good race, actually. You get to kind of customize the race to whatever you want it to be, because you've kind of been experimented on, and so you have these weird, like, animalistic features to you, and you can kind of go through some choices as far as what you want in there. And of course, I would have gone with the Manta Glide and the Carapace. So you have the glide feature similar to the Hodozi, and you also would be able to just have a +1 to your AC, which is really cool. But to me, you get so much more out of the Warforged, including flavor, that it just made way more sense to go with that. But Simic Hybrid makes a lot of sense. You could be whatever you want to be. Doesn't really matter. And of course, an elf. Elf always goes with blade singing, but you could have done darkness on yourself, or if you have a friend that wants to cast darkness near you, you could have done that with elven accuracy. And we would, of course, picked up something like Devil's Sight. We would have had that. And so, you know, if you have a friend casting darkness on you, you've got your Shadow Blade that you're concentrating on, and then you've got advantage on everything, and that gets kind of nuts. So that would have been really cool. But again, I can't necessarily assume that you're going to have a friend who's going to be doing that for you. So yeah, you know, it is what it is. And I mean, honestly, if you wanted to go custom lineage, it makes sense, right? Custom lineage or variant human, you can be Luke, you can be Yoda, you can be Mace Windu, you can be whatever you want to be. And so I think those are options to definitely consider, but I wanted to go with something a little bit more outside the box this time. So that is our video for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Next week, we move on to, I believe, our penultimate subclass choice for the fighter, which is really, really cool. We have moved through these pretty quickly. Then we move on to everyone's favorite, the monk. And I think some of you are probably excited. Some of you may not be as excited, but we will get there very, very soon. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.